Hi, this is Helena Hart, and I'm talking with Valerie Greene again today. Valerie is an amazing love and relationship coach who helps people attract, reignite, and maintain lasting love. And we are talking about such an important topic today, probably one of the most important topics we could ever share with you. We're going to be explaining how to heal your emotional wounds and triggers that are often coming from past experiences. So you can really attract and experience the love that you really want to have in your life. So welcome, Valerie, and thank you so much for being here again today.
Thank you so much, Helena. This is literally my favorite topic. I know I say that about so many of the things we talk about, but this really is the topic that's the closest to my heart because if we experience love on the outside, people could have everything they want on the outside, the perfect partner, right? But if you're not able to fully receive that love in those moments and deep intimacy in those moments when you get triggered, then what's the point of having love if you can't fully receive it, right?
That's so true, and I agree. This is probably the most important topic we could ever share with anyone. And make sure to stay till the end of this video because Valerie's going to share a very powerful tool and exercise. She's going to take us all through it on this interview that's going to help you heal those emotional triggers and wounds. But before we dive into that, Valerie, what are some of the common struggles you see with women who are, maybe like I hear from so many women who are having these like superficial relationships. Mm-hmm. And what happens is they get triggered and then things either just go downhill, right? Or they just feel that it's maybe not the right match. And so they want to just drop the guy and move on. There's just so many things that can come up, right? And get triggered in us. I'd love to hear everything you have to say on that.
Exactly. I mean, I like to think of a trigger as something that puts you into fight or flight. And so basically how that manifests, it could manifest in many different ways. And it's certainly been true in my life. It's actually fight, flight, or freeze. My favorite strategy was freeze all through my childhood. So I'm happy to share like part of my own healing journey as an example later. But basically a trigger is where you had an experience where you were younger and it was so painful that you developed in that moment a strategy to not feel the pain. And that strategy is like a protective mechanism that comes in the moment to just put you in fight, flight, or freeze. So either fight, run away, or like deer in headlights. And so it can manifest in many different examples. And you could probably see yourself in one of these examples, right? So the first example is if you're in a relationship, right, and your partner's talking about something really normal, like the weather, and all of a sudden he says something that reminds you of something that an ex said, and all of a sudden you're yelling at him, screaming at him, or you want to just like close your heart and be like, why are you saying that? And you're an asshole. So it's like you either start an argument and fight, or you kind of like withdraw or like run away. Or you could freeze like deer in headlights and I don't know what's going on. So a lot of times, that's a trigger when it's funny, like everyone's had this experience before. Let's say you're in a conversation with your partner and they say something that triggers you, whatever it is. It could even be a misinterpretation. Let's say your dad was like really angry when you were a child. And so you have a trigger around men being angry. And let's say your partner's like angry about something that doesn't even have to do with you. Let's say you're just having a normal conversation and he's angry about something that happened at work, but you can't be around a man's anger. Because every time you're around a man's anger, you go back to that place where you were 5 and your dad was yelling at you, right? So in that moment, what happens in your body is, and this happens in a split second, your body literally thinks you're being attacked by a tiger in that moment because that's how we're designed, right? So in that moment, when he's just saying like, oh, this guy pissed me off and blah, 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 maybe you start to argue with him and be like, well, you're not seeing the other guy's point of view, or like, you raise your voice or you start fighting with him and then you're in an argument, or you could just shut down emotionally. And this is happening because all of a sudden, what happens in the moment when you're triggered is all the blood drains out of your thinking brain and it goes into your amygdala, which puts you in fight or flight. And you feel in your body in that moment like you're being chased by a tiger. It literally feels like that. Like your heart rate goes up. You feel really passionate, or like if you're in freeze, you feel paralyzed, but it's like a very strong sensation. And usually your breathing stops. So that's like how you know that you're triggered, but it happens in a second. And in that moment, your inner critic usually comes in really hard, and they're either trying to make the other person wrong or they're trying to make you wrong. And you know that that's what happens in that moment. And so all of a sudden it was like a normal conversation. And in that moment, you're just like, either something comes out of your mouth where you're criticizing him, and it's like, you don't even know how to stop it. It happens like automatic. It's almost like if you're in slow motion, you can see the words leaving your mouth, and it's like, whoa, what just happened? And you can't stop yourself. That's one way that you know you're triggered.
Totally. Yeah, I'm just laughing over here because who hasn't been there, right? Where you literally, like, it's like your blood starts boiling kind of, and then you know every single word coming out of your mouth is like the worst thing you could possibly
say. I mean, we're laughing, but it's actually really painful.
Yeah, it's like literally you can't, the momentum is taken over. There's literally, it's like you're not even in control of it. It's like you can't communicate consciously when all your blood's being redirected to your limbs, because your body thinks you're actually in danger. So what do you have clients do? What do you do in that situation?
Exactly. And it could happen with another person, or it could happen when you're by yourself. Like another classic example is, if you have an anxious attachment style, or if you're just with a guy who's like unavailable. And he said he'd call and he doesn't. And so like in that moment, you're obsessing and thinking, what happened? And oh my God, I'm going to be abandoned and he doesn't like me. Like you're also triggered. It's the same feeling. You feel like deer in headlights, right? You feel like obsessed and paralyzed to do anything except wait by the phone. Like, so that's another example. And so I want to say that in that moment, what healing means. So first I'll kind of explain my understanding of what healing means. Healing equals wholeness. And so before we go into the modalities that I use and examples, I want to explain like the big picture, what healing is. Healing means wholeness, which means on a scientific level, if all the blood is drained out of your thinking brain and into your amygdala and you're in fight or flight, wholeness means having access to all parts of your brain again, so that you have choice. And instead of just freezing up and obsessing and waiting by the phone, or instead of just having those words come out of your mouth like slow motion, you recognize another choice in that moment. Based on, you're able to kind of zoom out, see the bigger picture and be like, well, what do I want here? And what action can I take, or what can I say or not say or do or not do to get what I want, which is what it means to have access to your whole brain. And on like a psychological level, what that means is that you have access to all parts of you, right? So like I'll talk a little bit about parts theory in psychology, because I think it's important to understand it's not like we have multiple personality disorder. But all of us have different parts of us that come out in different circumstances. So for example,
absolutely. Yeah. I just got a question on my channel about that the other day, a couple actually. So I would love to hear, everything you have to say on that and how this relates to this topic.
Totally. So it's like, we all know that we have different parts of us, and the only difference between a healthy person and a person with multiple personality disorder is that in a healthy person, we have an awareness that it's all us. So like a good example of that is like when you're at work, if like, let's say you're a high powered executive and you're at work and you're making decisions all day long and managing people, you're in your masculine energy. There's a certain personality that you step into at work where it's like, you're kicking ass and taking names, right? And like, hopefully when you're at home with your partner, you can switch into your feminine energy and you're a different person, right? Then you're not hopefully trying to kick ass and take names anymore. You're trying to be in your heart energy and, share your feelings and desires in a collaborative way. So the guy can actually lead and you can just relax and receive. Those are two different parts of you, right? Your masculine persona and your feminine persona. But there's actually a huge amount of parts that we have to our personality, and healing means that you have access to all the parts, because another emotional wound that we could have is where we disown certain parts of us. So for example, I know you like to talk about this. I think you actually talked about this in my interview for my podcast. Let's say you disown the part of yourself that's angry. What you'll actually do is then you'll attract a guy who's angry, because what the healing is is for you to heal your own relationship with your own anger. And so if you're like,
Yeah.
no, I'm never angry, I'm always nice, you might attract a guy that's angry and then judge him for it because you're judging that part of yourself.
Yeah, it's like
Right?
you can love that part of yourself and hate that part of yourself out
Yeah.
there in someone else. You're stuffing it down. You're trying to be more reasonable than that. You could have a part that's, you know, anger is a huge one, right? Because a lot of us have been taught that it's not okay to be angry or to express anger, jealousy, things like that, where we don't feel like it's acceptable. We stuff those things down and then we attract them out there in the world.
I know,
So,
it's really
so a man can express that anger or jealousy for us, right? It's like a system.
right.
They express that part for us and then we feel released. So
Yeah, but it's not healthy because
that
like
place.
the healing is then taking back ownership of your anger and then feeling the anger, but then taking actions that get you what you want, that don't sabotage you want. So there's a big difference between being angry and being hostile, you know? So separating the feeling from the action is really important in order to heal it, because the feelings are valid and you can learn how to heal the feelings and boost your feelings. But then the action you want to take is the action that's going to get you what you want, right? That's what we do as coaches, is we help people figure out what they want, even if it's just to experience love. And then how do you get that, right? So that to take the action towards getting what you want. And so the way to look at it, you know, an anger could be a part you disowned, or let's say you disown the part of you that could be reckless. You know, like a lot of people grow up in households where the parents were really overly strict and overly protective. And so, you know, you're taught that being reckless is wrong. But where, like the thing to ask yourself when you heal parts of you that you disowned is like, well, you know, if we have access to all parts of us, when would that part be useful? When would the reckless part of you be useful? Maybe at a dance party. Like you want to just like let go and like really have fun on the dance floor in a respectful way. But that might be the reckless part of you that gets to be expressed. And that's what allows you to have fun in your life. So it's like if you're with somebody and you're judging them for being reckless, usually that's like you've attracted them because you're not owning the reckless part of yourself. So like when you evolve that and you learn to make peace with that part of yourself, then you'll either help your partner evolve, you know, or you'll stop judging them, or you'll attract people that are more balanced. So that's what healing means. And I like to look at it in terms of like, if you look at all these parts, I think the biggest part of healing is owning the part of you that is the wise parent or the wise leader of all these other parts. And you're kind of looking at it as like, you know, you're driving the bus, and then all the parts of you are in the back of the bus. I learned this analogy from one of my teachers of one of the parts work modalities that I know called voice dialogue. You kind of look at it like all the parts of you, they have an input. They can say whatever they want. They're here behind you talking, but you're the one that's driving the bus. You're not going to let the 3-year-old part of you drive the bus, you know? So it's like in that moment when you're speaking and you're like, oh my God, the words are coming out of my mouth, but I can't stop it. You're actually letting your 3-year-old drive the bus, you know, like she's talking, not you. Like, you know, when you're in that moment with, like, let's take that example with the guy who is angry about someone else and you can't be around him being angry. Like in that moment that you start fighting with him because you can't handle it, it's like you're acting like a 5-year-old. You go right back to that moment with your dad when you were 5. And the strategy that you dealt with back then when he was mad at you is to get angry and fight with him or run away. And so we don't have more evolved strategies than that. And so like we do that again in our adult life. So the way that I have developed to help people heal from those triggers is to be with that 5-year-old part of yourself, or you don't have to look at it like your inner child. But if you want to look at it from a scientific perspective, we've gone the psychological perspective about like having access to all the different parts of you. But the scientific perspective is when the blood's in your amygdala, your rational mind is in your cortex, like on the top of your head, but all the blood drained down to the bottom so you can be in fight or flight. So healing is about connecting all the parts of your brain together, like bring the blood to all the parts of your brain, because that's where the resourcefulness is. So the 5-year-old part of you, like let's say, is in your amygdala, and your adult is in your cerebral cortex. That's the part of you that has access to language, to higher wisdom. So by connecting those two parts of you together in this practice, you're actually connecting all the parts of your brain back together so you have all the resourcefulness, so that in that moment, when your boyfriend starts yelling about like someone he's angry with at work, you have more choices in that moment. You can stop, and eventually you won't get triggered once you fully heal. But in that moment, at least you'll be able to stop and say, hold on a second, I'm triggered. Let me feel into what's going on with me for a moment. Oh, my dad used to yell at me, and so I get triggered just because you're yelling. Could you lower your tone of voice? I want to hear what you have to say. Like that's a resource that's available to you in the moment when you have started your own healing path. And then eventually, once you've really fully healed that trigger, which happens with practice, then you can be there in that moment when he's angry about someone at work, notice the part of you that gets triggered and go, oh, well, you know, he's just angry about someone at work. I'm not going to take that personally. I can be around that. That's safe. And then you don't get triggered anymore at all. And that is what's possible. I have healed my own triggers. And I've also helped clients heal from triggers so that like they're not just sitting there obsessed waiting by their phone, or they have that opportunity in that moment instead of fighting to be able to have a, collaborative conversation about what their feelings and needs are instead. So like that's the result that's possible. And now, of course, I'll talk about the actual practice.
Yeah. Oh, I love everything you said. It's so true. Yeah. I'm just getting this feeling of like the bus driver or the in charge of all the parts. I have similar tools. I've shared videos on my YouTube channel about, speaking to this part of yourself, rather who's trying to act out and sabotage you, or at least that's what it feels like, speaking to it and then, loving it, embracing it, accepting it, then telling it that, like I'm the adult and I'm in charge. I'm going to keep all of us safe, depending on how many parts are popping up. And then these little parts of ourselves can really transform, right? They can, your anger can transform into energy to get masculine energy and gear for yourself, which is an example off the top of my head. Or your fear can transform into this amazing intuition that we have as women, right? And where you can use it in a way that's going to work for you. Feel it and listen to it, right? Rather than this part that you have to stuff down because it's trying to sabotage you. So I just get this feeling of either all these little pieces of yourself fighting against each other or in conflict versus like diminishing the sabotaging power that they have, which adds to your collective power as a whole, healthy, healed human being. And I don't know if that's the way you think of it, but that's kind of the feeling I'm getting as you're talking. And I'm just loving everything you're saying. Will this be a good time to dive into that exercise that everyone can do?
Well, sure. And I mean, the process that I teach has several steps to it. I like to call it emotional alchemy, and I'll just go over all the steps and have you have an experience of them. But I love what you're saying. I think what you're saying is spot on to what I'm saying. And I love that you have your own parts work modalities. The thing about parts work modalities is there are many. The practice that I teach, and I kind of, create custom practices depending on each client I'm working with, but I'm basically integrating the modalities of, mindfulness and somatic experiencing and voice dialogue and internal family systems and neurolinguistic programming and nonviolent communication and interrelationship focusing all together. So I know that's a lot of modalities, but I'm sure you have your own. And I think every teacher and healer has their own. And so, I mean, I think that it's so wonderful because this is the work that each one of us is here to do on the planet. I mean, imagine if everybody did have access to that wholeness. I mean, that gives me goosebumps because that's what we're really here to do as human beings, is just like have access to all parts of ourselves so that we can experience love, but also so we can really live our purpose on the planet.
I love that that's super powerful. Love that you said that. Yeah, it's so funny. Matt and I were checking out your website when we were before. Valerie, by the way, we have this inner circle program, and Valerie is doing the Q&A for that now. So we were checking it out, and I remember Matt was like, "Oh my gosh, she's trained in everything. She's done so brilliant and put together. Oh my gosh, she's like the most knowledgeable person in the world." And I'm like, "Yeah, so awesome,
so honored." I mean, I'm sure we all have our own unique blend of wisdom and knowledge. Each of us is here to impact people in different ways. So
yeah, I just love everything you share.
Honored to
Yeah, your
Yeah, and I feel
exercises
honored to be
are
here.
amazing. I know we did a live stream on how to reparent yourself and heal if you have an anxious attachment style, and we were chatting before we started recording, and this will actually help you no matter what attachment style you have, no matter what your emotional triggers are, right? So this is really all encompassing. So yeah, I'd love to dive into this exercise. But I'm really
Yeah. So I think like the first part of the exercise is to really connect to your adult self. And that's necessary to do before you even have a trigger. And what I mean by your adult self is, like I said, when we get triggered, we kind of regress to whatever age we were when the trigger first happened. And so it's necessary to connect to who you are as this loving, wise parent. And a lot of the women I work with are either parents or they want to be. And I can't tell you how many women I work with who are not yet parents, but they want to be. And it's like, oh, well, the first way to be a good parent is to be a good parent to all your inner parts. And what are the qualities of a good parent is that first of all, you have unconditional love for the feelings of all the different parts of you and the desires for all parts of you. And you can have compassion and empathy for that, but you only tolerate healthy actions. So like a good parent would tell the child, no, you can't have candy for dinner, but candy would be so yummy and I know it tastes so good and that's why you want it and you're sweet like candy and don't worry, you'll get candy after dinner. So you're not like just being like, no, but you're not just being like, oh, you want candy, here it is. It's this nice balance of like unconditional love, presence, non-judgmental curiosity for like the desire underneath the action, but you're not letting that part of you take the unhealthy action. And so let's have everybody then tune into like, what does it feel like to be that adult self? Like maybe you have a child that's in your life. And so you can tap into in your body, what does it feel like to feel unconditional love for that child, even though they might annoy the hell out of you, but like, if it's okay to say that, but like they're so adorable and that like underneath their actions is a desire for something good. So maybe you have a child, maybe you have a niece or nephew, maybe you have a relationship with a child, or like maybe you just have a friend who you feel like you give emotional support to. And like when you're with that friend, when she's speaking about her problems, you can have that compassion for her. So whatever it is, like put yourself, right now in that space where you're this loving, compassionate adult parent who has access to higher wisdom. And just notice like, what does it feel like to be that in your body now? Because that's the part that is important to tune into when you get triggered. And that's the part where you don't have access to when you're triggered. So it's important to ground yourself in this identity. Like I think healing really happens at the level of identity. Who I am is this wise, loving, compassionate presence, this consciousness that's observing everything else with non-judgmental curiosity. And if you want to look at it from a spiritual perspective, for those of you that are spiritual, that's what raising your consciousness means. You're identifying with that higher consciousness that is holding unconditional love for all the different parts of you, and with the understanding that healing means shining the light into the dark places, knowing that there's actually no such thing as darkness. There's only light and lack of light. But when you start shining the light into the darkness, let's say in an attic that you haven't been in a lot of years, the first thing you'll notice when you turn the light on is cobwebs and bugs and critters, and they're like, I can't take the light, so they run away. And there's dirt everywhere, right? So it's like, it's not, it might be really painful at first when you shine the light in the darkness, but actually there is no such thing as darkness. So when you intend to shine the light in the dark places, the first thing that you're going to notice is pain. And the antidote to pain is compassion. To remember that when you were a child, you didn't have access to compassion because your parents didn't hold that for you. If they did, you wouldn't have developed a trigger there. So the only response you could have in that moment when you were hurt as a child was to close your heart to that trigger and to develop a belief that you're not good enough or you don't deserve it because that's the only thing that felt safe in that moment. So it's like we're identifying with our adult self to shine the light into those dark places. And so first I want you to feel in your body, what does it feel like? If you're a meditator, then this is mindfulness space, right? It's non-judgmental. compassionate presence. But if you're not a meditator, this is what it means to be that child to that 3-year-old who's having a temper tantrum, where you're giving her empathy for her feelings, but you're not letting her have the candy, So whatever that feels like notice what that feels like in your body as you try that on your relationship with like a younger, person in your life. And where do you feel that in your body? Because like, I feel that in my heart when I'm saying that. It's like an expansive, uplifting feeling. So like, where do you feel that in your body, Helena?
I love it. Yeah, I would say same. You like took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah, probably like, or maybe, yeah, just somewhere in my torso, probably. It's more of a centered, it's not up in my head when I'm not grounded. I almost feel my thoughts dropping down into my body when I do that. You mentioned
I love.
Yeah. I just kind of, all the thoughts spinning around, all of a sudden they just kind of like an elevator.
Right.
Feel kind of more grounded. And I love what you said about there's no such thing as darkness. There's just light and lack. I could not agree more with that. I heard this, I can't remember where I heard it. It was this analogy where there's no dark switch, right? There's only a light switch.
Yes.
You're on or it's off. And it reminded me of that when you said that. So this is phenomenal. Yeah, let's just keep going with it. I'll just switch it so that the camera stays on you, and take us through the rest of that. This is amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I love what you said. And also, I mean, I think it's like, it's easy to get caught in thinking that there is darkness, because it's important to remember that hurt people hurt people. I know it's funny, but it's not, so like I love that quote from A Course in Miracles that says, all acts are either a act of love or a cry for love. So it's like to recognize that people do such horrible things out of this space of being triggered. And so it looks like darkness, but actually when you look at it, I mean, like, we'll go to the extreme, like, I know this might be controversial, but someone who murders somebody, like in that moment, like that was the only strategy that they could use to get rid of their own pain, and I'm not saying that it's good to murder people. And in fact, part of owning all parts of yourself is owning the part of you that, let's say, would kill in self-defense. I'm not saying killing is good, right? But like, there's a part of you that would kill. I mean, if we look at it from a spiritual perspective, I don't want to get too much on a tangent, but like the root of decide is the same root as homicide or suicide. So making a decision is killing off all the other options. So the part of you that is decisive, like, is killing off all the other options. So it's like owning all these parts of you, but recognizing killing another person is not okay. But what is the like one situation in which it would be okay? Maybe self-defense, maybe war, And so it's like having access to all parts of yourself, to recognize that underneath every action, there's a need that's being met either in a harmonious way or a tragic way. So how you apply this is that when you're identifying with that adult healer, parent self, you want to look for whatever else is inside of you with non-judgmental curiosity and the desire to be with whatever's happening inside of you in the present moment with that non-judgmental loving consciousness. And if you find something that is not non-judgmental loving consciousness, then that's something to be with and shine the light on. So like, let's say you intend to be with your inner child who's feeling hurt, and there's another part of you that comes up that says, it's not okay to feel hurt. You're weak if you're hurt. So then you can be like, well, but I'm not feeling non-judgmental consciousness. I'm judging the hurt. What do I do? Well, the point is that anything that arises inside of you in that moment, there's something to be with. So that there's a part of you that thinks it's not okay to be hurt, then you have to be with that part first. And so like the point is that you can rise to embodying that loving parent self and be with that part of you, which is probably your inner critic. Where do you feel that part in your body? Or, so what I do when I help people learn this practice is I help them to decide or to, figure out if they're more visual or if they're more feeling oriented or if they're more auditory. So like you can notice inside yourself right now, we can kind of do this practice a little bit. You can notice, like, let's say, we can remember now a minor trigger that happened. So let's say your partner, did something that annoys you, where you're not like, this isn't the kind of thing where you'd want to bring to this practice, like your partner saying, I want a divorce. Like that would be too much in this moment. But we want to work with something minor. Like, let's say your partner left the toilet seat up again, something minor, or the toothpaste cap, not on or whatever. But so you want to notice like something that triggers you on a minor level. So what happens in that moment when you get triggered? Most people feel it in their body, but some people hear a voice in their head, or some people like see an image. So like whatever it is that happens for you in the moment, that's something you can be with, and recognize that your unconscious mind speaks to you through either feelings or images or sounds. And this is part of neurolinguistic programming, is like actually working with how is your brain programmed, and like helping to reorganize the way you're programmed, so you're programmed in a way that works for you. We won't go into that in this because we don't have enough time in this interview, but like I want everyone to have an experience of what it feels like to like, so like let's say, your partner left the toilet seat up, whatever it is. But find that incident and notice what happens for you when you get triggered. So do you feel it in your body? Do you hear a voice in your head? Do you see an image? I feel it in my body, so I'm going to talk about that. But like, obviously you can, respond to the corollary of what happens for you. But like, so in my body, I feel it in my body and I hear a voice in my head, right? They're related. So it's like in my body, I feel my heart starts beating faster. I feel like a tightness in my belly, and I feel like a heat rising in my chest, and I'm angry and I want to yell at him. And maybe if I acted out of the trigger, I would just be like, what's wrong with you? Don't you have any consideration? How many times do I have to tell you to leave the toilet seat down? So that might be how I react out of the trigger. But in that moment, it's like I can notice, oh, I'm triggered. So the first thing that I do is I be with that feeling in my body and the voice with unconditional curiosity and empathy and self-acceptance and love. And I put my attention on the strongest place in my body. So you can do this right now if it's you. And I notice I'm just going to take deep breaths. That's the first thing you want to do when you're triggered. If you're with your partner, you want to take a timeout, because notice that whatever comes out of your mouth is going to be, coming out of the trigger. So if you're with your partner in that moment, you could be like, hold on, I'm triggered. I just need a moment to go inside. Or if you really can't be with him, you could be like, all right, I'm going to come back in a half hour. It's important, I think, to create a time limit if you're with someone, because otherwise it could trigger them to be like, oh, you're just not going to talk to me about it, or you're never going to come back. So I think it's good to be like, let's come back in a half hour, let's come back in an hour, whatever. That's all you can say and then leave. But notice you're triggered and take deep breaths. And so everyone can do this now. And I close my eyes when I go inward because I'm being with myself. So I'm paying attention to where do I feel it in my body? So like I said, I feel like an anger, and I feel a heat rising, and I'm just going to be with that. And as soon as I intend to be with it, there is that voice that comes up, right? And that voice is saying, well, you can't just be with it, because that's just being too permissive. And like, he's never going to change if you don't do anything, and you have to do something about it, right? So maybe I need to be with that voice first. So I'll put my attention on that voice. And who does that voice sound like but my dad, right? So it's like there's all these modalities. The most important thing to do in this moment is to disidentify from whatever it is that's coming up for you. So whether it's a feeling or a voice, to say, that's my inner child, or that's just a part of me, or that's just a feeling in me. Something in me is feeling that way, right? So this distinction comes from a modality called interrelationship focusing that I've studied. And so just notice the difference inside of you when you say, I feel really mad, versus something inside of me feels really mad, right? So that just allows you to disidentify from it so you can be with it. That's the key distinction in this practice, because that allows you to then have freedom to do the healing work. So you're not just acting out of the trigger. It's like, that's something inside of me to be with. So in that moment, it sounds like the loudest part of me is that voice that's like, it's not okay to just be with it. You have to do something, right? That sounds like my dad's voice. So I'm going to be with that voice. It sounds like it's coming from the right side. So it's like, you really just want to like be with it, right? So the voice sounds like it's coming from the right side, and it's my dad. And so I'm like literally now from my adult self, I'm identifying with my adult self who has loving compassion. And if you can't have compassion, then imagine that part of you is like a friend who's that way, whatever it takes for you to have compassion for that voice. And so to really turn your inner empathy towards that voice as a separate part of you. And so I'm turning my inner empathy towards that voice, and it sounds like my dad, and my dad is telling me you have to do something. You can't just sit there. And I'm having empathy for that voice. And I'm like, tell me more about that. Why doesn't it help to just sit there? And that voice is going to tell me, well, because then nothing will ever change and you always have to be doing something. Oh, okay. I understand that, right? So then let it know you hear it, but then keep on listening, because the adult has access to wisdom. Keep on listening. Is that really true that you always have to be doing something? What'll happen if you do something out of anger? Is that going to work? Is that going to actually get me the results I want? And then I pose that to that voice. And the voice might not just agree with you. It might be like, yes, it will. I'm going to do something. I'm going to rip his head off. And it's like, okay, I hear you're really angry, like vent. So you might have to let this part of you vent. And like, actually, if it's really angry, and I'm saying it, but it's a part of you. And like, it helps to either call it or she, or even he. Like, I feel like some of my inner parts are male, it's like it, but the point is to realize, okay, there might be a voice that's coming up in you and saying, you might be just making this up. But the point is, you are making it up. But the point is, you're actually making everything up. Like, because you never have access to the full picture, right? You're only seeing things from your point of view. If you like, God forbid, witness an accident, like everybody in the perimeter of the accident is going to see a different thing. So it's like, no, you're not sure. You are making it up, but your unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between something that actually happened and something that you're visualizing or feeling is happening. And so what you're doing is you're just creating by visualizing, or like you can do this through journaling too. Like one practice that I'll have people do to clear the emotional energy is to like journal a letter that you don't give to the person about all the reasons that you're angry, to kind of get it out, but then disidentify from it and say, that's just one point of view. Right? Like there's a whole nother point of view out there. And so you disidentify from it and realize you are making it up, but that connects all the parts of your brain together again so that you're resourced. So I'm going to be with that voice. Maybe I have to vent. Maybe I have to hit pillows, like whatever it takes to fully let that part express itself. And then eventually though, the point is, when you're really in touch with your inner adult who has access to healing and wisdom, the truth will emerge. So what's the truth about taking action out of that trigger? Like the truth is it's going to push him away and you'll get into an argument, right? So eventually that part is going to realize the truth and relax. Like what happens in my mind when like I have a dialogue with that voice where it's like, you have to do something, is like, I hear you, but that's my dad. And look at what happened with my dad. Like, he developed sleep issues because he didn't know how to deal with his own anger. And, so it's just kind of like being with that part until the truth emerges. Then you can be with your vulnerable inner child, because your inner child is the part of you that feels the most vulnerable. And underneath that anger, there's hurt, right? So like, this is where the real healing occurs, is when your inner child can recognize you as the loving, wise parent. And so like, I'll go into my story of healing to demonstrate how this happens, but your inner story might be, of course, different. But like, I used to have a trigger around social situations, like big parties. And I know that a lot of my clients have triggers around this too, because I coach a lot of women who are like, I tell them to go to events to meet men. And they're just like, of course, Helena, the way to meet men is just to have your heart open, be in your body, make eye contact and smile, like you're approachable. But if you have social anxiety, you can't do that, right? You're kind of like closed, and you're sort of like at the corner of the room, you're a wallflower, or you only talk to the people that you know. And then you're not going to meet anyone, right? And that's how I used to be. I used to have social anxiety, and it was because in my 20s, and that was because between the ages of like 7 and 10, I was bullied. And I just like froze up when I was in social situations because I was scared people were going to judge me. And so I use these modalities in myself. And the thing to recognize is that when you first contact your inner child and you tell her, I love you unconditionally and it's okay, people are safe, she's not necessarily, I mean, she might, but she's not necessarily just going to be like, oh, thank you. Now I'm feeling your love and I'm all healed now. No, it's like, what happens when you go up to a child who's mad and you say, I love you? She's probably like, I hate you. You know, why didn't you come to me sooner? And you're horrible. And like, you know, I don't trust you and I don't believe you, right? Like, why haven't you been here before? Like, usually your inner child is resistant, right? So it's like, but the point is, how would you actually treat a child who was feeling that way? And so, like, I'll give an example with my inner child. This is the example I share in my book, just because I think it's a really simple example. And so what I did is I just like, I'm very feeling oriented and visual. So what I did is I just spent time with my inner child in my body. And like, I'll describe this instead of leading you through a practice, because the practice would take a long time. And that's why with clients, a lot of times these kind of healing sessions will go 90 minutes because it's about really going into your stuff so that you can heal it. So like, I'll share my healing journey just so that, you know, you see an example of what's possible. So when I first contacted my inner child with the social anxiety, she was mad at me. She was like, why weren't you here before? And like, I don't trust you. And like, what do you know? You know, so she wasn't all sweet and nice. So it took time for me to be with her and to show her, no, I'm here to listen to you now. And so when she trusted me, then she started sharing all her pain, and I was crying, and she was just like, but why don't these kids like me? And they're making fun of me because I don't dress like them, and there's something wrong with me. And, you know, so I picked her up and I was like, there's nothing wrong with you. They're just superficial. This is just part of growing up. But like, that wasn't enough. She actually needed me to teach her how to be with people. And so this is where the modality of neurolinguistic programming comes in, which is what I do with my clients. Is my inner child would show me memories, and a lot of times memories do come up. And so neurolinguistic programming, the paradigm of reimprinting, is what I use. And it's a visual modality. So, because I'm not a therapist that helps people heal from trauma. So if you have major sexual trauma or emotional abuse or physical abuse, a lot of times working with a therapist is the best modality to heal that, because you can work with someone that can really titrate the trauma. So that's not necessarily what I specialize in, but like, people have triggers and trauma, everybody does. So in this example, like, she showed me memories, and what I did was I actually inserted myself as a visualization into the memory, and I taught her how to interact with other kids, so that, you know, I'm closing my eyes because I'm visualizing. She learned from me how to connect to her confidence and how to find which kids were, you know, she belonged with and which ones she didn't, and to not take it personally, you know, and to stand up for herself. And like, I visualized that going differently. And the cool thing about this is, like I said, our unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between something that actually happened and something that you're visualizing. And so the reason why I had social anxiety is because in that moment, on an unconscious level, when I went into a room, my body on an unconscious level said, nope, you can't be there because people are going to make fun of you. And that comes from how you feel about that memory. So if you change the way the memory feels, like now when I remember my childhood, I actually remember that it went the way I visualized it. You know, if you do this enough, I know it didn't happen that way, but it's like the feeling I get is like a sense of empowerment. And so now unconsciously, when I am in a room with people, I feel empowered because my inner child has all those resources. But that wasn't the end of my healing process, because when I tuned into her, she was still angry at me because my parents didn't teach her those skills about how to be with people. So why did it actually have to go in a negative way where I went through those years of being bullied because my parents didn't have social skills to teach me? And why didn't they teach me those skills? And so I had to be with her. And like the thing with your relationship with your higher adult self is you have access to wisdom and higher truth. And if you're spiritual, then you can imagine that that's coming from some kind of higher being or spiritual guide. Or I think I mentioned, like in my last interview on anxious attachment, like I have a client that visualizes that a monk, Thich Nhat Hanh, is there with her inner child. Or like I have another client that imagines that Jesus is there with her inner child. So like it's really up to whatever resources you can bring into that memory to access the higher wisdom, but it's always available. And of course it can help if you work with a practitioner. But so in that moment, like my inner child, she was like, why did I have to go through this? And then the answer that I got when I really tuned into my higher wisdom in my heart was that if I didn't experience that deep pain, then I wouldn't have empathy to then help other people heal from pain. And then when I really took that into my body, it healed it. Like, I mean, it completely healed it. I cried. I felt this love come into my body. And what else is healing besides feeling that sense of unconditional love? And like now when I remember that memory, it's like, I'm glad that it happened, because otherwise I wouldn't have had that emotional depth to be able to hold space for other people. So it's like what I help people do is tap into the gift, the reason why they had to go through that so they could be the person they are now. And that's when the healing is complete with that trigger, because then what you feel in your body, I'm not saying you're healed completely from all triggers, because I think it is kind of like layers of an onion, right? But that heals that layer. Then like, so now when I'm in the room full of people, I get excited. I'm like, ooh, lots of new people to connect with. Like, this is fun. And if my inner child is scared in that moment, I know how to like go to the bathroom and be with her and like comfort her and soothe her and tell her like how I'm going to be with people and like what's going to happen if somebody says something mean to me and how I'll laugh it off or stand up for myself. And like she calms down and then I'm happy and I go into the room and like I have resources. And so that's what's possible for you if you're really able to be with the parts of you either in your body or be with the voice inside your head. Like a lot of it really is tapping into the wisdom that's the truth of your limiting belief, right? Because like we all had limiting beliefs that we developed in childhood because it was too scary to feel the pain. And we all have strategies that we've adopted, like my strategy of freezing up, like I said, in social situations because I don't feel safe. And so healing means that you have access now to more strategies than just that one. You have a wider menu of options available now in that moment, and you're able to focus on what you actually want rather than self-sabotage. And so like when I've worked with women that have healed from triggers, let's say if they are anxious or obsessive or self-critical and, you know, they've been self-sabotaging in love, like now they can actually receive compliments and receive love and not push it away. Or they can like be in those social situations with men and like actually be around a man that, you know, you're attracted to without freezing up, because that's where I see it in a lot of women I work with. Or you're able to be in an argument with your partner and transform it to deeper intimacy instead, because instead of using your defense strategies of fighting or running away, you're able to be like, hold on a second, I'm triggered. All right now in this moment, I just need to be, you know, my dad used to yell at me, and so I can't be around people yelling, but I want to hear you. So can you lower your tone of voice? Thank you. That feels safer. You know, so then you're able to actually have all of that wisdom available in that moment. And that's what I look at healing as.
Wow, that was all so powerful. Yeah, and I just wanted to totally just highlight you and have you share everything you have to say. Of course, there's probably so many more tools, but I love that one that you shared specifically. Would you mind, before we close out, just kind of recapping? The thing that I got from that most was disconnecting yourself from what's happening. So instead of saying, I'm feeling angry, there's a part of me that's feeling angry, or there's a part of me that's feeling this, or I would love to have you just recap, like step by step, quickly, you know, how women can do that for themselves, because I love how you shared your own personal journey, and I'm sure your clients experience huge transformations around that. So yeah, let's recap that tool, and anything else you have to say on this topic would be great.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, and I want to present you more specific steps that you can use. I just wanted to outline my journey so you can experience like the, you know, an example of what's possible. And I mean, I've healed a lot of other triggers, but I think that is probably the most prominent one, because like obviously triggers keep coming up in my relationship, but now I can actually be there to like unconditionally love myself and my partner even when I'm triggered, and then we can transform it into deeper intimacy instead of arguing. So it's like I love these tools. And so like I said, yeah, the first step is actually to notice when you're triggered, because I think that's where we all like get messed up, is when we just take action instead of slowing down and like stopping taking action and going inside. So it's like noticing when you're triggered means like you notice when your heart rate goes up, you notice when like you're feeling angry or you're freezing up. And the impulse we have in that moment is to do something. And so I think it's like necessary when you think like, I have to do something about this right now, but you're not actually being chased by a tiger, or, somebody trying to actually hurt you. Then that's a sign that actually it's not the right time to take action. It's the right time to go inward. So like, that's the first step. And to make a timeout agreement, if you're with a partner, to be like, look, I have these triggers, and I know that when I get triggered that there's not any more, there's nothing good that's going to come out of acting out of it. So when I'm triggered, I'm going to go like this, make a timeout agreement. And then is like, we're going to stop talking after that for like a half hour or whatever. Like, is that okay? And making that agreement with your partner, because otherwise in that moment, they're not going to know what's happening, and they're still going to keep on going and wonder what's wrong with you. So those are like the prerequisites for the practice. And then the first part of the practice is actually disidentifying from whatever is going on inside of you, recognizing that whatever's going on inside of you, if it's just reacting rather than creating, if it feels like you're powerless or you have no control over it, like if it feels like there's something out to get you, then that's probably your trigger. Assuming that you're sitting there with your partner and you're not like, in an earthquake or something where you really do need to take action. So the first step of disidentifying is saying something in me feels that way, or something in me is thinking that, as opposed to I feel that way or I think that, so that you can be with it. And like I said, the scientific reason for that is that then you're just connecting those two parts of your brain together so that you have more resourcefulness. And you have more space to then be able to ask that part of you questions and channel truth for that part of you to take in. So that's the first step. And then after that, the point of the practice is to find out, first of all, I mean, there's a few things that you could do. Like if you're with that part of you, you can ask, like, what are you believing about yourself or about the world or about men? That doesn't serve me, and what's the truth of that belief? I think this is much more powerful than just doing cognitive belief work, because cognitive belief work can be really powerful, like saying affirmations, etc. But it doesn't necessarily reach the triggered part of you. You don't necessarily, because like if you say an affirmation, for example, like, I deserve to receive love, but you don't feel that way, it's because there's a part of you that can't take it in. So the point is to be with that part of you and help to rewire, that part of you's belief system, and also like the actual feeling of taking in the love. So the first thing to do is to check to see if there's any limiting beliefs. And if there's a lot of emotion or a lot of anger or a lot of like judgments, then you can journal those out. You can hit pillows. You can dance around the room to get that energy out. And like, I know I shared in the other interview that on healing your anxious attachment style, that the research by Jill Bolt Taylor says that a feeling in your body doesn't last more than 90 seconds if you fully accept it, if you're not just like ruminating about the judgmental thoughts, but you fully accept it. So like, if there's a strong feeling in your body, then the thing you do at that point is to take deep breaths and imagine you're opening your heart to this feeling, and just like say to yourself, it's okay to feel that way, and observe it as a sensation. Like, is it tingly or numb? Is it hot or cold? Where do I feel it in my body? Is there a color or shape to it? Like, I'm not going to guide you through that practice because I did in that other video. Plus I know that we've already been going for a long time, but like, that's the first thing to do. If you feel strong feelings, the first thing to do if you feel strong judgments is maybe to journal them out, just to like release them. And then what you want to do is you want to be with that more vulnerable part of you with love and compassion, and provide the corrective experience. That's the key to healing. So like, for example, in that memory, the corrective experience that I didn't have is this experience that like, I belong. I can stand up for myself if somebody is making fun of me. I know who to connect with that I do belong with. Like, so you want to provide the corrective experience to that part of you, because like what the research shows in healing is it's one thing to say to yourself, I belong, but you don't necessarily feel it until you have a shift in your body. So that's what you're looking for in this healing practice, is you're looking to be with, either through visualization or through like dialoguing with that part of you as a sensation in your body, or imagining it as a picture. Like a lot of people I know do inner child work with like a doll, talking to the doll. Some people do inner child work, splitting a piece of paper down two sides, and one side of you is you and the other side is your inner child. Like whatever helps you to have that dialogue to provide the experience. So it's one thing, because like you can then say that affirmation to your inner child, like, or to that part in your body that's feeling, resigned. Like, oh, okay, you feel resigned. Tell me what that feels like. Tell me what that looks like. It's one thing to say you belong, but it's another thing to hear the response that part of you has. Like, what's the resistance, and work through that resistance, which is the same thing as parenting a real child who comes to you and says, I don't belong. Like, you don't tell a child, yes, you do. And they're like, oh, okay, you're right. They're like, no, I don't, because Sally said that I have ugly hair. And, so it's like you're dialoguing with that part of you, like either through a doll, or through, you could set up two chairs. Like a good Gestalt technique is like, you set up two chairs, and one chair is you and the other chair is that part of you. I'm very feeling oriented. So I usually work with it as a feeling in my body, and through that NLP technique of reparenting with visualization. But like, so that's what I do when I work with clients, as I help them figure out whether they're more visual, auditory, feeling oriented, to find the right way to be with their inner child. But you don't need to work with me for that. The point is, you just need to learn how to connect with that inner, vulnerable, young part of you, and give that part of you the corrective experience, meaning whatever needs weren't met in that memory that then caused you to feel so much pain, to feel the pain. That's what letting the light into the dark places means. Feel the pain with compassion, because compassion is the antidote to pain. Just like being with that part of you, like you are a real mother with a child. Like, what do you do with a child who's in pain? Pick her up and say it's okay to cry, and you can feel the pain, but then you provide the corrective experience. So like, what was missing in that moment that if you had that would have made a difference? And for me, it was self-confidence. And so it's like, what does it feel like to have self-confidence? And what does it look like to have self-confidence in that situation? And what do I need to believe about myself to have self-confidence? And what skills do I need in order to have self-confidence in that situation? And so I'm actually teaching that part of myself, like what that actually looks like and feels like, and then visualizing the memory going differently with those skills. And what that does is it reprograms it inside my mind as to like, now all parts of me have that skill because I imagined it going differently in that memory. But you don't have to do it that way. You can journal about it. You can journal what would it look like and feel like for me to have self-confidence, or for my inner child to have self-confidence in that memory. Or you can like dialogue with, like a doll or something that represents your inner child, pick up that doll, comfort her, say, I'm here for you. You belong with me. I'll take care of you. I'll provide the needs for you that your parents didn't, and really allow her to take that in. So like, if love was missing, give her love. If acceptance was missing, give her acceptance. If, what are some other things that could be missing in that moment? Like if boundaries were present, tell her you'll protect her. And then the last part of that, like when she really feels like she trusts you and like you're safe, and then it's visualizing what different action you'll take instead of the new action. So now that you're an adult, like when I do NLP with people, I actually have them visualize themselves growing up with this new awareness, because that's a way of integrating the inner child back into them. But there's many different ways to do that. But then the final experience in this is to actually evolve a new strategy. So for example, if you're sitting there like with your partner who's yelling at, not at you, because like that would be different, but if he's yelling about something at work and you're triggered with a man's anger, like what's the new action that you'll take out of this place of feeling safe, your inner child safe, you accept her, you can stand up for her. What's the loving action that you would take differently next time? And visualizing that, because visualization really increases the chance that you'll be able to have access to that new behavior in the moment. So like you actually visualize yourself sitting there with your partner and going, hold on, I'm triggered. Can you lower your tone of voice? And all of a sudden now, in that moment in the future, when it happens again, then that new strategy is available to you from the inside out. Because it's not just that you're telling yourself you'll do it, but because you've done this inner work of being with your inner child and healing her beliefs and healing the memories, like now you'll actually have access to a new strategy in the moment. Because even if you do get triggered, it'll be easy for you to then take a timeout, go inward, give your inner child the corrective experience, and then say, okay, now I'm not triggered anymore. Now I can be present with you, So it's like really, or if you're not with a partner, if you're like anxious, in a dating situation, then you could actually stop waiting by the phone and like go live your life, and like, interact with that man as somebody who, you're getting to know, that you're sensing whether or not he can really be emotionally available for you rather than just being obsessed about him.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So true. Thank you so much for outlining those. We'd love to hear from you guys too. I know we're like way over on time, but we started this a little late too. But everyone, please type your experiences with this in the comment section. You might need to listen to it a couple times and really like take it all in. I know a lot of people say when they watch our videos, they get something out of it the second or third or fourth time. So yeah, let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section. We'd love to hear your experiences with this exercise. It's so important. And I imagine, I could imagine myself doing this several times with several different parts of myself.
Oh yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Totally. Oh God. I mean, I have different parts of myself come up all the time.
Oh yeah.
The part that wants me to stay up too late because it just wants to have fun. And, the part that like wants to, continue doing other people's trainings because I don't think I know enough. Like, even though I've done 100 trainings, I mean, you can look at my website.
I know, right? Well,
there's so many parts.
Yeah, so funny. Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that was totally unique to you. I certainly learned a lot listening to like how to do those steps. I could even feel in myself like how that would just really transform everything and give yourself a different feeling. Because just like you said, it's one thing to say, oh, well, you belong. And it's another thing to actually feel what it feels like to belong and to put back into those past experiences and experience it in a new way that's like actually really empowering. Then you're not acting out of those same triggers over and over and over. So that was all so powerful. Let's talk about your free gift and how people can get a hold of you and get a free breakthrough session if you're still offering those. Tell us what you have for everybody.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it brings tears to my eyes to be able to help women through these situations, and men. I do also work with men, but mostly my clients are women. And so if this is the kind of work you want to do, I'm honored to discover how we can work together. And I do offer a free one-on-one I call it a breakthrough session, where we outline a plan for how this practice can apply to you. I listen to your story, and then we co-create a plan together. So I know that Helena is providing a link for you to apply for that free session, and that's available to anybody who has the time and money to hire a coach and you want to connect with me to see if you're the right one. So, I mean, if I'm the right one for you. And so I encourage you to click that link if that's what you're looking for. And then I also do have a lot of free gifts. They're not necessarily related to healing, although I do provide a lot of similar practices to this in my book, the 234-page book, The Commitment Roadmap. And so I know that Helena usually pastes the link to that too. But I have 3 gifts. I have 3 free gifts depending on whether you are in a committed relationship as a couple, or you're a woman in a committed relationship, or you're a single woman. So the free gift that I have for couples is called a video training, 3 steps to stop fighting and start connecting. And that one allows you to like pause and look at each other's feelings and needs. So that is a part of healing. And for women in relationship, I have a free ebook called Man, A Fast Lasting Love. And that's how to then communicate your feelings and needs in a way to a man, to a man. Because even if you've done the healing work, men still communicate differently than women. So I teach you a 5-step process to be able to share your feelings and needs with him in a way that's inspiring. So that's the Man, A Fast Lasting Love ebook. And if you're single, then I have another ebook that I call the Magnetic Dating Formula. And that is how to identify your values and really how to meet men that are compatible with you. And so that that's called the Magnetic Dating Formula. So those are all free gifts that you can just download with the links that Helena is going to provide below. So I really appreciate everybody watching this. And you know, this is, like I said, it really, I do a practice every morning where I tap into who I am is a clear channel for unconditional love and wisdom and empowerment. And my work feels like, oh my God, I get to do this. It's my deepest privilege. And when I get to do this healing work with women, I really feel that way. And it is such an amazing, fulfilling part of my purpose on this planet. So I'm so grateful to be provided with an avenue to speak about it.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I feel the same way, and I love having you on my channel. You're total favorite. Everybody always asks for, you know, all the links to all the videos, the other videos we've done together. So I'll put Valerie's free gifts and the links to all. We must have close to 10 other videos that we've done together. Just like this, and they're on all different kinds of amazing things, how to inspire a man to meet your needs, right? Deep questions to ask a man to foster a connection with him. So many things, how to inspire him to want to commit. We have a lot of things on attachment styles, healing anxious attachment style, inspiring a man who has avoided attachment style to meet your needs. The list goes on, and there's just so many things to talk about. So let us know in the comment section what other videos you'd like us to create. We'd be happy to do that. It's just such an honor to be a part of your journey. Everyone watching, thank you so much for being here. Let us know what you think in the comment section. And Valerie, thank you so much. We should definitely do this again soon.
Yay. I love it. Thank you so much.